Did you know that you can get a free confident communication coaching session with me? Yep, completely free. The only catch or the exchange is that you let me publish it as a podcast episode. And if you want to see how this works, go back and have a look at episode 177, Sales Conversations That Feel Fabulous with Caitlin. Now, the reason I do this is if you have listened to me for a while, you'll know that I'm a massive fan of working out loud. And what I know for sure is that any coaching conversation that you and I have will be of tremendous value to my listeners. So I offer these coaching sessions for free, if you let me publish it as a podcast episode. It's a whole lot of fun. You walk away with a bunch of tools and frameworks that you can use in your very next conversation. And me and my listeners get a really juicy podcast episode. So if you're curious, just click on the link. Just click on the link in the show notes and book in a time for a confident communication coaching session. The Triple C. Welcome to another episode of Speaking with Confidence with Kat Matson. That's me. And on this show, I coach business owners, public servants, humble leaders, and other corporate hippies how to speak with authority, with confidence, with authenticity, and with impact, so you can make your desired contribution to your world. It's lovely to have you here. I hope you're having a fabulous day. And today, I shouldn't laugh, but today I think I'm addressing one of the most common challenges that I hear people say. They tell me, Kat, I'm fine. I know my stuff. It's all perfect in my head. In fact, I can mentally present, speak, have an argument. I can do everything. I know it. And somewhere between my brain and my words, my brain and my mouth, I just can't say it clearly. So today we're talking about how do you go from knowing it to saying it clearly, so that people listen, people act, people do something with it. Oh, it's a good one. And my temptation is to go down so many different rabbit holes, but I'm not going to. I think it's useful to remember that this is perfectly normal, and it doesn't make you any less knowledgeable, smart, intelligent, clever, experienced, any of those things. It's perfectly normal. And it's perfectly normal for a whole host of ways. It's normal because we process information in different ways, whether you're neurotypical or neurodiverse. Some of us think in pictures, some of us think out loud, some of us are verbal processors. Some of us, we've got that fear of public speaking, and so just literally that notion of speaking what we think becomes a fear-orientated thing. Sometimes we're just having a bad day. Sometimes we're perimenopausal and the words just don't freaking work. We can see all the pictures in our heads, but what word? What was that again? Huh? Or maybe we're pregnant. In fact, the one time I was presenting a workshop, like standing in front of a room, 40-odd people. I was 7.5 months, at least visibly pregnant with number 2. He's now 18. And I'm standing there and I'm in full flight. I love being in front of a room. I'm in full flight. I'm having a ball. And I literally lose what I was saying. Literally, not as I was transitioning, not as I was moving from one sentence to the next, mid-sentence. And I just looked at the audience and I went, oh God, for the men in the room who have supported their wives, who have had babies, you might have some familiarity with this. For the women who have given birth, I've literally just had that moment, that baby brain moment where I've got nothing. I have no idea. I could barely remember my name. And so I said, could anybody tell me where you think I might have been going? What did I just say? What do you think I was building up to? They all laughed and told me, and I was able to pick it back up. But it's normal. It is normal that we have disconnects between brain and mouth, and it is not a sign of anything other than being human. And isn't that human experience just one of the most delightful ones on earth? So knowing that it's normal, I think, helps, all right? So how do we articulate ourselves in a way that we can be heard? And how do we get what's in our heads out? The first thing is begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. One of the things that we tend to do when we're passionate about a topic or when we really want people to believe us or understand us is that we will drown them in all of the data. We will give them all the things that we will know. We will spend a whole lot of time demonstrating just how experienced, knowledgeable, insightful we are by telling them all of the things. And that just becomes overwhelming. And we also then notice the overwhelm on their face. And that then triggers a nervous system response that has us, we're receiving the feedback that says this isn't working, we should change tack. And so what do? We talk even more. We go into even more detail and we lose even more words. So begin with the end in mind. What is the, not even what's the point, but what's the change? Where do I want my listeners to be? What do I want them to believe? What do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel after this conversation? And if it's relevant, what action do I want them to take? When we can begin with the end in mind, we can then ask ourselves, well, what's the gap? What's the gap between where they are now and where I want them to be? Where they are now and where I want them to be. And then we can ask ourselves, well, what are the three key messages that I can use to bridge that gap, to get them closer to where I want them to be? Now, the reason I say three key messages, one, it's so you can remember them. 3 key messages, 1, 2, 3, is easy for you to remember. It's really easy for your listener to remember. And any more than 3 key messages, and you are going to overwhelm them because you're not the only thing that they're dealing with today. You're not the only piece of information they're dealing with. They are dealing with whether Johnny remembered his cricket gear for this afternoon. They're dealing with that email that's sitting half written that they need to get back to, that it's really awkward. They need to figure out what's for dinner tonight. Like all of the things. You're just one piece. Sorry. You're just one piece. And so when you begin with the mind and when you begin with the end in mind, I should say, and when you begin with this notion of how do I help them get closer to where I want them to be, then you're completely reorientating your message and you're completely reorientating the information that you're giving them. Once you've figured out what those 3 key messages are, then you can focus on the essence of what you're saying, not the words. Not the words. It's not about the words. In fact, it's never about the words. And yet it's the thing that we tie ourselves up in knots with. If people want a beautiful piece of prose, they will read poetry. When you are having a conversation with someone, they just want to understand. I used to work with a beautiful gentleman who would say to me, give it to me in Sesame Street terms, Kat. And he wasn't saying, speak to me like I'm a 2-year-old. He was saying, just give it to me in easy chunks of information that I can easily receive, that I can easily process and incorporate into my already full and overwhelmed mind. So begin with the end in mind. Figure out what the gap is between where they are now and where you want them to be. What are the 3 key messages that will move them closer? And then focus on the essence, not on the words. Focus on the essence, not on the words. And that way, all of your expertise gets illustrated not by telling them everything that you know, but by inferring that you do know. And I think this is a really important shift that we need to make. We so often feel like we need to establish our authority. We need to earn our credibility. We need to prove that we know. And so we want to show all the stuff. We want to show them all of the information that's in our heads. But 9 times out of 10, that's not what people want. In fact, The reason you're having the conversation is because they want the summary. They want the highlights. They want the essence of what it is that you know, not all the detail. So rather than proving your worth by drowning them in all of your knowledge, when you begin with the end in mind and when you help them bridge the gap from where they are now to where you want them to be, then you're demonstrating your expertise. There's such a quiet sense that, oh, she knows exactly what she's talking about. So begin with the end in mind, bridge the gap with 3 key messages, no more, and focus on the essence, not on the words. Now, I've spoken about this in a number of different ways over this podcast, so feel free to go back and have a look. In particular, though, I want to draw your attention to an episode 162, How to Prepare in 2 Minutes. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this particular episode in this particular conversation is because if you can quickly prepare what you're about to say in 2 minutes, you've been given 2 minutes notice to introduce yourself and explain to a room full of people who you are, what you do, and how you can add value. That's really good practice for what we're talking about here, which is beginning with the end in mind. 3 key messages, essence, not words. So episode 162, How to Prepare in 2 minutes. I'll drop the link in the show notes, but it's well worth your listen to just get familiar with how you can quickly collect your thoughts and demonstrate your expertise without overwhelming them. And, connecting that brain and mouth into a meaningful, coherent conversation. If this conversation has been useful for you, if this podcast episode has been useful for you, good grief, I would love it if you could leave me a review, comment, follow, rate on whatever platform that you're listening on, because they're all different. The reason for that is, one, I love knowing that people have listened. Podcasting is one of those very interesting conversations where I often feel like I'm speaking into the void. But 2, and this is probably the far more important piece, it helps other people get to know that this podcast exists. In case you hadn't guessed by now, I am very, very, very determined to have more diverse voices, particularly the humble leaders, particularly the quiet ones, the introverted ones, the neurocomplex ones, contributing to the conversations that matter. Because it's not about loudness, it's not about charisma, and it's not just about seniority either. We need everyone contributing. And the thing that gets in the way of that for lots of people is the traditional advice about just be a more confident speaker. Just do your thing, be more assertive. And that doesn't work, particularly not if you're neurocomplex. And so what I really do on these episodes is give practical advice for everyone to show up with greater authenticity and authority. So when you rate, leave a comment, follow or subscribe, you are helping this episode or helping this podcast get into the ears of other people. So thank you in advance for helping me reach more people. And a reminder that if you would like a free coaching session with me, you simply need to click the link in the show notes for a confident communication coaching session. And it's free so long as you let me publish it as a podcast. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope this has been a useful episode for you. I look forward to seeing you again real soon. In the meantime, here's to confidence and here's to impact. I'll catch you soon.